Okay, we are live on YouTube and about to go live on the webinar. Hello, good morning. Welcome. I think there's some people joining on YouTube and about to join the webinar as well.
2 seconds, we're going to be observing as of now.
Observing a minute silence. So thank you. Yeah, I can see it.
May their dearly departed souls rest in peace. We just thought that it was important, given that we're doing all of this as a part of supporting everybody through COVID-19 lockdown, that we join the UK in observing that minute silence. So thank you all for joining. Great to have you on the call. I don't know, how are you guys doing? It's like we're into the next phase of lockdown, isn't it? Where we've gone through. Thanks, Sam. That's Sam telling us that we're live and it's all going well. It's like we've gone through the shock of all change and being home and setting up to be able to work from home and getting used to each other. And if you, in any change curve, the next phase is always about, okay, how do we create the routine, a new system, a new normal? And I think that's the phase we're in now. And we've had, I can't remember which session this one is now, but
this is number 7.
This is number 7.
7 of 8.
Yeah, we're doing, this is the second to last one. We're doing the last one on Thursday at 3 o'clock. And what we wanted to share with you today is a model that helps, in a sense, bring together some of the principles that we've been discussing to help you identify and articulate where you are in your various relationships, and also find a way to move things forward if you wanted to change the quality of the relationship that you're experiencing. I'm smiling to myself because there's a picture of a model that I want to show you, which is under the computer. So give me 1 second. Okay. There we go. So this model will help to give it context and to just help you know with confidence that wherever your relationships are, you can develop the skills and learn the habits to help you move it into a better place if that's what you want, or if it's good, to know why it's good and to help keep it being good on purpose. So Jenna, give us the
sure
overview.
I mean, well, even before we jump to that, basically it's a simple 2-dimensional model that looks at the skill that we need to improve the quality of our relationships and the will that we need to have to apply what it takes to make a difference in our relationship. So it's about skill and will, if you think of those two things there. So as Andrew was saying earlier, understanding the model helps you firstly articulate where you are in your relationships, why they feel the way they do. But then the good news after that is, once you can see where you are in the I guess in the quadrants that come out of the looking at the matrix, you can then say, okay, well, what can I do? What do I need to do? What will be the most helpful thing to do to move my relationship to a better place? So that'll all become clear in just a moment. So should we share the model?
Yeah, go ahead.
So there we go. Sharing the model with you. Sorry, got lots of reflections and stuff coming on the screen because of the lamination. But if you can see that, so on the vertical axis, you have the skill, and the horizontal axis, will. And really where we want to be in our relationships is up in this top quadrant over here, top right-hand quadrant, which is mutual satisfaction, which actually is where relationships start out. We start out in our relationships, I'll move that model away. We start out in our relationships in a place of mutual satisfaction, quite often it's the honeymoon period, we call it, and there really you happen to be in mutual satisfaction more by chance than by choice. There's a lot of goodwill. There's a lot of
everybody's on best behavior.
Everybody's on best behavior.
Being nice, being considerate.
Yeah, and you start out in mutual satisfaction, but guess what? Doesn't take long before differences start to show up. Differences in the way that you respond. Little things start to frustrate, and you can very easily drop out of mutual satisfaction.
Yeah, but there's actually a flip-flopping, if I can hold it here. There's a flip-flopping that goes on between mutual satisfaction and frustration. The more we develop the skills to understand how to do relationships well, the more we can stay in mutual satisfaction or get back up to mutual satisfaction by choice, rather than by chance.
And that's the key.
And that's the key thing. Yeah. It's the more we build the skills on this side, the better we get in our relational intelligence and our ability to build strong relationship skills, the more we're able to enjoy mutually satisfying relationships. And this applies whether it's relationships with your partner at home, with your kids, with your friends, your family, with your colleagues at work. The better we get at our relational intelligence, the better we're able to turn up well and behave in a way that strengthens rather than damages relationships.
Absolutely.
But even in the best of relationships, you'll have this flip-flopping going on, because you'll bump up against differences in assumptions or expectations. You might think differently about money. You might think differently about tidiness. You might think differently about, what are the other things we argue about? Work styles.
Disciplining children.
Yeah.
Any number of things. How important it is to tidy the house, to clean the house, to make beds, simple things. Leaving the toilet seat up or down. Simple little things that can frustrate you.
So as we bump up against and discover other differences, that's an opportunity to talk things through and agree how you're going to work together for each other's sanity, to help look after each other. So this flip-flopping between mutual satisfaction and frustration is normal. Where it becomes a challenge is where you get stuck and you find that you're arguing over the same thing over and over again, especially if it's something that's really important to one or both of you, and you find yourselves at opposite ends of the spectrum. Core value stuff, like disciplining children, for example, and one thinks spanking is okay and the other doesn't, or circumcision is okay and the other doesn't. You know, it's when you get stuck and you find yourself arguing over the same things and not being able to find a way forward, that's what gets exhausting, and that's where you can end up going into desperation.
Yeah, you drop down into desperation. You start to essentially lose the will to make a difference in your relationships. Just watch the reflections.
Yeah, that's right. That's a very good point. Oops, let me hold it up one more time so you can see it properly.
Yeah.
It's where we start exhausting ourselves over unending arguments and difficulties, that we start feeling like if we keep doing the thing that we've always done, we'll end up with the same results, and we can't see a way forward. And so many couples, so many relationships actually fall apart, not because people don't care or don't love each other, but because they get stuck in this downward spiral of action and reaction and just don't know how to come out of it. And the will, that emotional bank account, the way we keep turning up, just keeps draining the emotional bank account, so that we lose the desire to just want to work on the relationship.
I was just going to say, just to recap on you, when we talk about the emotional bank account there, the emotional bank account is really how you manage and maintain that will. And so those of you who are with us for session 1, I think it was, in this series, will remember we spoke about the emotional bank account. If you weren't with us for session 1, then please go back and look at our YouTube site, the Soulmates Academy YouTube site. If you go to YouTube, Soulmates Academy, you'll see the recording there in the playlist, and that talks about the emotional bank account. But just in 10-20 seconds, it really is just that mental record we keep of the interactions we have between us. Remember, we spoke about that. If they're positive, they land as deposits in the account. If they're negative, they're withdrawals and take it out. And they're all things that we're all doing unintentionally that are causing withdrawals out of the account. That's what we need to stop doing. It's those things, those unintentional withdrawals, that are causing the frustrations that lead to the problems. So if you can minimize the withdrawals and actually make deposits on purpose, you keep your emotional bank accounts in positive territory. And when you do that, you have your best chance of keeping the will alive and wanting to invest in the relationship and do things positive.
Yeah, we got distracted with doing our minute silence. We didn't actually tell you what skill and will was. So will is about the state of the emotional bank account, and the more positive it is, the more will there is to work on the relationship. The skill is about the 4 fundamental habits that we talk about, and that's what we're going to be covering on Thursday. The 4 habits of all relationships. And we have to say, it's not just about knowing these skills and these intellectually, it's about learning the skills to the point where it creates a behavior change, where your habits become the habits that build strong relationships. Most of the time, our default habits actually damage relationships. They certainly don't help in dealing with conflict and so on, because we're in such strong self-preservation.
And the will is such a strong driver that if your will is low or absent, then you don't really care. You don't want to do even the things, even if you know what to do, you have no interest in doing them. So that's why they say desperation, where your will is low and skills are low. Desperation can be behaviors can be toxic in that space.
Correct.
Because this is where you have bullying, you have manipulation, you have all kinds of negative behaviors, because people don't really care, or they're almost anti the relationship. They're no longer interested in having a good relationship, because the frustration is just time and time again. They're like, I'm done with this. I can't be doing this anymore.
Toxic is a really good word because this, as John said, is where the will is drained and the skill levels of how to deal with things and make things better are still really low. And in the workplace, this will show up as workplace conflict, as bullying, as John said. This is where projects will get derailed because people find excuses rather than reasons to push through and make things happen. In a couple relationship or a relationship at home, this is where it's always tense. Every conversation becomes an argument. This is where people who were originally in love end up being unkind or bitter or hardened and turn up as such mean people. Not that they are necessarily bad, but because things have gone toxic. This is where it's easier to manipulate rather than to talk about things, because the conversation would be too difficult or too vulnerable. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. So many of us live lives of quiet desperation because we don't have the skill and we don't know how to reach out for it. This is also where we start throwing a lot of things at mediation, counseling.
I was wondering what kind of throwing you were talking about there.
Well, this is where, when things get so bad, sadly, our culture right now is to wait until things get really bad, and then we start looking for ways to make it better. But by then the will's drained, and we've had so many couples say to us, when we start sharing the skills and trying to help them through their situation, we have them saying, this is really interesting and helpful, and I wish I knew this earlier, but quite frankly, it's too late now, and I'll save this for the next relationship. So what happens is, even though you're building your skill and you're getting all this input, you can still end up in isolation. And isolation is literally where people live separate lives.
It does what it says on the tin. It's living separate lives, leading separate lives. And again, this applies in work context and home context. People just go about their own business, not interested, even if I know what to do, not interested in doing that, and go about their own thing.
Well, so you end up leaving companies, leaving teams, leaving the relationship because you just have no will, no interest. It will be too vulnerable a place, not having the trust in the relationship anymore.
The key thing then has to be to regain and rebuild that will to get back up into mutual satisfaction.
But what we're saying is, even from there, there is a way forwards. From wherever you are in any relationship, there is a way forward to get to mutual satisfaction. And the key is to learn the skills and change our own behavior.
Yep.
We have no control over the other person, but we have absolute control over how we turn up and how we relate to people. And I'll mention the habits really quickly. We have 1 minute left.
What, the 4 habits?
Yeah.
That's next session.
Yeah, but you don't want to give any sneak previews.
No sneak previews. Next session. Join us on Thursday.
Okay, join us.
You will have seen some of the habits on the TEDx talk that we do
right.
anyway. If you've seen the habits, they're there. But join us on Thursday. We'll give you an overview and some examples, I guess, of the 4 habits and how they can be used to build that skill and also manage the will to get you into that place of mutual satisfaction.
Yeah, so the key point we want to land it with really is to say we can each take responsibility for our own level of relationship skills, our own changing our behavior to living out the 4 habits that we're going to talk about on Thursday. We can take responsibility for how we show up.
Yeah.
We can also take responsibility for nudging and moving our relationships from wherever they are, even if they're in isolation, because we've seen it happen where people make the decision and make the commitment that, you know what, we don't want this to go down the tubes. We will do whatever it takes and work on ourselves and work on the relationship to move it from isolation to mutual satisfaction. And we have stories where we've seen that happen. So the point we want to leave you with is wherever you are, whichever box you think describes your relationship, there is a way to get into mutual satisfaction and to stay in mutual satisfaction. Even if you flip-flop between frustration, camp, you set up camp in mutual satisfaction and enjoy great relationships around you.
Develop the skills and build or rebuild the will, and you can get back up to mutual satisfaction.
Yeah. I feel like this one was a kind of a sober session,
wasn't it?
Because
I think it started with the somberness, but it's the reality of life. It's where we are.
Where
it's
we
the
live.
Season of life. Again, for those who've lost loved ones, our hearts are with them. These are really, really, really tough times.
All the more reason to learn how to proactively enjoy
the time
great relationships around you.
When you have the time together, enjoy it.
Yeah.
We're out of time, guys. It's been great as always. Thanks for joining us.
Lovely to see all different continents represented here. Great to have you all. All right.
See you, and we'll see you on Thursday, 3 o'clock.
For the last session.
Final session. That's it, guys.
All right.
3 o'clock Sunday time. Sunday time. What am I saying? London time. On Thursday.
And the rest are on YouTube.
Yeah.
The other recordings.
Alrighty, guys.
All right. Good to see you. Bye-bye.